Job Smith, alias Campbell and Brodie, born England, for the crime of burglary. Sentenced to 10 years transportation to the colony of Van Diemen's Land. Arrived on the ship Sir Robert Peel in 1844. In 1875, he was charged with rape and executed by hanging. Alfred Malden, born United States of America. Arrived free in the colony of Van Diemen's Land. Sentenced in 1871 to 10 years imprisonment for the crime of shooting with intent to do grievous bodily harm. James Marney, alias Sutherland, native to the colony of Van Diemen's Land. Sentenced in 1883 for the murder of 2 men. Executed by hanging. His accomplice, Robert Ogden, alias James Ogden, native to the colony of Van Diemen's Land. Charged with the murder of 2 men and executed by hanging in 1883. James Glenn, born Scotland. Convicted in 1863 of housebreaking. Sentenced to 10 years transportation to the colony of Van Diemen's Land, arriving on the ship Clyde. Sentenced to another 10 years imprisonment in 1871 for receiving stolen silver plate, and a further 2 years in 1877 after being found guilty of being armed with intent to steal. Leonard Hand, native to the colony. Recorded as stupid. Sentenced to 15 years imprisonment in 1866 for the crime of attempting to commit sodomy. Died in prison in 1876. Thomas Archer, alias Thomas Smith and James Smith, born England. Found guilty in 1846 of housebreaking with intent to steal. Sentenced to 10 years transportation, arriving in the colony of Van Diemen's Land on the ship James Calvin. Further crimes in the colony were as follows. 1862, burglary. Sentence, 8 years. 1869, housebreaking and larceny. Sentence 8 years. 1876, burglary and larceny. Sentence 10 years. And 1884, burglary. Sentence 9 years. William Russell, native to the colony of Van Diemen's Land. Sentenced to 18 months jail for the crime of unlawfully beating. George Charlton, born England. Convicted of burglary and sentenced to 10 years transportation to the colony of Van Diemen's Land, arriving on the ship Blundell in 1844. John Norman, native to the colony. Found guilty of housebreaking in 1883 and sentenced to 1 year imprisonment. John Gregson, native to the colony. Convicted of housebreaking and robbery in 1871. Sentenced to 5 years imprisonment. His brother and accomplice, Francis Gregson, guilty of housebreaking and robbery in 1871, and sentenced to 6 years imprisonment. William Sewell, born England. Redcoat soldier. Private in the 2nd Battalion of Her Majesty's 14th Regiment. Arrived in the colony of Van Diemen's Land in 1866 on the ship Siam. Charged with burglary in 1867 and sentenced to 10 years imprisonment. James Calhoun, native to the colony. Charged with sheep stealing in 1869. Sentenced to 2 years imprisonment. Daniel Davis, native to the colony. Charged with assault and robbery in 1883. Sentenced to 18 months imprisonment. Further charges included 1885, larceny, sentence 3 months. 1886, larceny, sentence 3 months. 1888, larceny, sentence 6 months, and 1895, larceny, sentence 1 month. Died 2 years later in 1897 by drowning in a river. Thomas Owens, alias Michael Foxley, born England. Found guilty of stealing. Sentenced to 7 years transportation, arriving in the colony of Van Diemen's Land in 1832 on the ship Gilmore. Further crimes included 1863, larceny. Sentence 6 months. And 1870, housebreaking and robbery. Sentence 4 years. John Moran. Born England. Sentenced to 14 years transportation for the crime of receiving stolen pistols. Arrived in the colony of Van Diemen's Land in 1841, on the ship Lady Franklin. Further crimes in the colony included 1862, larceny. Sentence 18 months. 1874, larceny. Sentence 1 year. 1875, larceny. Sentence 6 months. 1878, larceny. Sentence 3 months. 1881, larceny and burglary. Sentence 10 years. 1888, burglary. Sentence 6 years. Died the following year in prison in 1889. William Ryan. Born Ireland. Found guilty of uttering a forged check in 1868, and sentenced to 2 years imprisonment. Charged again in 1870, with uttering and forgery, and sentenced to 10 years. Cornelius Hester. Born England. Found guilty of housebreaking, and sentenced to 10 years transportation, to the colony of Van Diemen's Land, arriving on the ship Equestrian, in 1852. Further crimes in the colony included 1857, larceny. Sentence 2 years. 1865, absconding. Sentence 5 years. 1870, larceny. Sentence 5 years. 1876, housebreaking. Sentence 10 years. And 1881, larceny. Sentence 1 month. Ephraim Booth. Born England. Sentenced to 7 years transportation for the crime of larceny. Arrived in the colony of Van Diemen's Land in 1844 on the ship Lord Auckland. Charged in 1868 with the crime of rape. Sentenced to death. Punishment commuted to life imprisonment. Henry Stock. Native to the colony. Charged in 1883 with forging and uttering. Sentenced to 6 months imprisonment. In 1884, found guilty of the murder of his wife and young stepson. Executed by hanging. 1884.